Welcome everyone back to the Pommy and Oz channel. We are joined by another guru. Every time I come on a show, I'm introduced as it, so I get to introduce someone else. I'm super excited. Great content creator, really burst on the scene this year, so you should all be subscribed to him. If you're not, link is in the description, first thing you see, so make sure you click on that and subscribe. But I've got the great man himself, Dylan Alexander. He follows the draft. It's a great show. Dylan, welcome aboard, mate.
Thanks for having me, Pommy. Really, really happy to be here. Been a fan of your content for quite a while, so it's good to, when you hit me up, you slid into my DMs, I was like, this is going to be good, I reckon. So talking draft is, I like talking draft at any point, but this is going to be fun, I reckon.
Yeah, mate, it's weird because like when I first started 4 years ago, there was me, and it's really good now that we've got loads of people doing it because it like creates that atmosphere, and like your content has been phenomenal all year. I've got to put my hat off to you. It's been fantastic, and it's probably the most important part of our game, but the least covered part of our game.
100%, yeah. I think you're starting to see a bit of diversity too with the content. Like you're starting to see people that just cover the Coates League, like they just cover WA footy or South Australian footy. So you've got plenty of kind of places just to touch base and be able to get information, and it's starting to feel like we have like a real serious draft, like in American sports and that sort of thing.
Mate, spawn, it's a fascinating thing, but we've got a real fun concept. So I know everyone watching this misses the AFLX. I know I do. It was the greatest thing ever. We're bringing it back, but with draftees. So what me and Dylan are going to attempt to do is create an AFLX junior team. Basically, we're going to bring it back with kids. With all the draft class, we will be drafting 2 defenders, 3 mids, 1 ruck, which is going to be very hard, and 2 forwards. There's going to be no rules to this. Just basically, we're going to do a draft, snake draft, so whoever gets pick 1 first round will obviously he'll go 1, 2, 2, 1 that way. So Dylan 1, Pom 2, Pom 3, Dylan 4. Very simple. You should have all done snake drafts, and will be one caveat is we spin a wheel for each round to see which player we take, whether that's a defender, a forward, a ruck. But first, we need to know who has the honours. Who goes first? That is super important. So we go to the dreaded Wheel of Destiny. You can see there, so no one thinks I'm cheating. That says Dylan. That says Pom. Because I remember when we used to do this with other guests, you've speculated I cheat. I don't.
He has cheated.
He's cheated. Well, I mean, at this stage, having pick 1 isn't great, I've got to say, because we don't know what it is. But that will mean that the order will go in a snake. It'll go Pom, Dylan, Pom. So yeah, very simple, very simple. You can't mess this up, people watching at home. But then we have to go to what we're picking. So the first round of selections, I'm hoping that this says ruck. If it doesn't, we're in a world of hurt. Oh, great. Well, that's easy, isn't it?
That's better than mid, though. That's better than midfielder.
It's up there. It's up there. It's up there. So we'll remove one of the rucks, and we'll bring ourselves back on screen. Okay, we'll pick one of this draft. You know what? I need a bit of marking prowess. I need a little bit of sex appeal in the forward line. This might surprise some people, but I am going to go Bendigo Pioneers, Job Shanahan. I'm going to go with a versatile, Charlie Curnow-esque, mobile, high marking. So I've got a big target in this smaller field. So, Job, welcome to the Poms.
Was there any kind of thought to go with Harry Armstrong there, or is it that an easy decision for you?
It's tough. It was tough. I did look at Harry Armstrong. I'm always dubious of back-end form. For those who watch my content, I always worry when it's back-end form and you suddenly come in. And Harry, great year, but like back-end, sensational. It's been elite. Just feel Job's body of work. I like the way he moves as well. And I just feel in this type of game, I always go with my gut. I did look at mid-forwards, I've got to admit. and thought I could cheat the system, but I thought, you know what, first round, set the standard, I'll play by the rules.
Fair play. I was actually having a conversation with someone about Harry Armstrong the other day, and we talked about he's probably only played, as much as it was a brilliant game, he's probably only played one absolute, smash it out of the park where he's playing on a really, really high-quality defender, and that was that game against Vic Country where he just went ballistic with his contested marking. He'd had some good games, but just where the opponent's been really up there, I think that was probably the big one.
Mate, yeah, spot on. It always comes into my calculations, but yeah, I like Job. Job smells like a key position player that would be happy to be the third and will contribute as well. So figured, Job, get in. I'll give you a reward and hopefully don't regret it with whoever you select now.
I've got a question before we keep going. With the forwards, do we have to go key position and smalls, or can we go? We can sort of do that however we want.
Yeah, you can do mid forward if you want. Like we can cheat.
Sweet.
So, Dylan, I've gone Joe. Who's your first forward?
My first forward is Joe Berry.
Oh, he was very high up on my list, I'm going to be honest.
And that's probably the main reason I've done it, because I don't want to give him away. I just think this guy probably is everything that the last few drafts, teams have definitely gone down a path of wanting to draft smaller forwards, like forward half contested possession winners, guys that can win those big contests inside forward 50 and hit the scoreboard. The fact that Joe Berry's got that extra ability to run further up the ground, go through the midfield. He's a beautiful kick of the footy too, so he's got that ball retention side, which I think helps with being able to stall momentum from other teams as well if you need to go into those different game modes. So I love that about him, and just he's fun to watch, isn't he?
He stands out as well, doesn't he? Like, he's one of them players that when you do watch Joe play, you notice whether they're winning or losing, because he seems active with and without the ball, which you look at modern day football, we're starting to evolve to hybrid smalls, aren't we? Where it used to be one pressure, one goal kicker. Now the best ones who are coming through can switch at a drop of a hat in-game situation. So Berry's got that, and small forwards are lazy generally, aren't they? But he is very, 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 very active.
He's definitely one of those ones that's higher up the ground too. And one thing I didn't mention there, which you sort of touched on, was the aerial ability, which I don't know. I think every team needs that one sort of, small that plays tall, like your Cody Waitman, your Toby Green, that type of player, Jamie Elliott at the Pies, one that can take a mark. So Berry sort of ticks that. So he does a lot of things.
Mate, I like them selections. One's gone high, one's gone low, and we technically both picked forwards, so that there's no arguments. But now you will have the first pick, and we don't want to see Ruck here if you team Pom. If you team Dylan, you definitely want to see Ruck.
Oh, that's bad.
Well, I mean, at least there's a bit of depth in here, so this should be exciting. So, Dylan, midfielder to join your super team.
So there's a guy that I've been really, really hot on all season. I declared him as the number one pick after he played a game of VFL. I feel like I want to pick this guy, but I'm actually not going to do it. I'm going to just pivot a little bit here. Again, I'm going into the flexibility and the versatility part of my team, and I'm going to go with Sam Lawler.
Ooh, tell you what, the St Kilda fans in the chat will love that because they're hot on him. Why do you like him so much, Big Sam?
I look at all of the players in this draft, and I think there's a lot of run-of-the-mill, those sort of nice midfielders, accumulator types that can get plenty of the ball. They win their clearances and that sort of thing. But I don't think there's anyone with the sort of game-breaking penetration of a Sam Lawler. He's got that explosiveness in his running. He can just, burst through guys. So there's a lot of like intangibles in that as well. Just watching a teammate to play with someone like that can just, guys are just bouncing off him. Loves a tackle as well. So he's got that defensive side to his game. And then you can throw him forward, like in that game against Vic Metro when he was playing for Country, and he's able to take a really, really just compelling mark inside forward 50, go back, kick the goal. I think he's a team lifter and just someone that there's not that many of those types of players. So I think when you get an opportunity to draft a guy with that sort of explosiveness, you got to take it.
Mate, I agree. I think he's one of them players that in drafts years gone by would probably be top 3, wouldn't he? And it's just because it is a real deep midfield class. Like, it's pick your poison. I know when I was doing my power rankings, we were talking about it quite at length, that it's kind of like pick your poison. Like, there isn't a huge gap like there was with Horn, Francis and Dacos. It was them two, then Daylight. Here, you can make an argument for anyone in that top 3.
And I reckon you could make an argument that Sam Lawler is equivalent to a Horn Francis. Like, he's that type of player, like that sort of explosive player who was a pick 1, but just as you said, the strength of this draft, and also the fact that he did do that hamstring injury and he was injured in the early part of the year. I think that will push him back a little bit. Like, that has to have some effect. And I talk about his explosiveness and his athleticism. That's a bit of a worry in the sense that those players tend to, their bodies, it's more difficult for them to get it right because they do seem to, pick up injuries and that sort of thing. So it'll be a hesitation because of the durability.
He is in that perfect position, though, when we talk about these type of players, that he's not going to go to a rubbish club. So, and I mean that with all due respect, but you can protect him a little bit. You can say, right, we've got the big bodies to protect you. You can basically enjoy yourself for a couple of years as your body develops to play against the big, bustly men.
100%. Like, manage minutes, give him a rest every 4 or 5 weeks. A little bit, I guess, what happened with like Harley Reid this year at West Coast, even though he was in they're a bottom dwelling team. But yeah, just give him breaks when he needs it so he can get his body right.
I love that, Pete. Well, I mean, I've got to find a midfielder, and this is one of my favourites. Everyone who watches knows I'm a sucker. I want to destroy the academy system, but I'm going to take the academy boy. I'm taking Levi Ashcroft, and the reason is, for those who are long-time watchers, he's been professional technically all of his life almost, and I look at Levi. He can defend, he can attack, he can find the ball. You've only got to look at his brother. His brother's pretty crash hot as well. I just feel like he's ready-made, and I've got my star. I've got my guy I build around. And I think in real worlds, where we didn't have bid matches, I think Levi would be the best player in this draft.
I think it's fair. I mean, I think Cal Toomey actually wrote about him and said, like, he's probably put together the best junior CV that you could possibly do. And that's got to be at 100%. Like, I've had him lower in rankings. I think I had him 7 in my most recent draft rankings, which is probably harsh. I guess the thing that I don't see is any major upside. I guess, like, what he's doing now, he's probably just going to elevate that a little bit, be able to, win more footy at the highest level, and he'll be creative, but I'm not sure if he's that, Bontempelli, Dustin Martin level midfielder at the end of the day. Like, he could be a top 20 player, top 30 player, but maybe for me, not a top 10. But I still like the pick, and you'd love to just slot him into your team. Someone that can, find the footy so easily. And he's still, like, that's the thing. I did a comparison with him and his brother the other day, and Levi hits the scoreboard even more than Will, if you look at their numbers through their underage footy. So, great pick.
No, I love it. And I do enjoy Dylan's content, because Dylan, people who know me know that I'm a big high floor player. So I always say risk for me, top 5 picks. I'm looking at top floor. Who's got the highest floor? So if they have a bad game, at least I'm safe. And Sam Walsh is a great example of that. Someone that might not have the explosive ability of a Nick Dacos, an eye-catching ability, but I know his worst game's 30 touches. That I like your mindset, Dylan, because you love the ceiling, don't you? You're looking at that. Can he change AFL?
100%. And I think, there's an element of that where, I'm not ultimately making the decisions, so I can do that, right? So I'm having a little bit of fun with it. But at the same time, I think the game is moving away a little bit from those players that there's still going to be, a space for those players that have that sort of endurance and they pick up plenty of the footy, but it's all about being able to control the moments, those big impactful moments. And I think some of these players that have that extra athleticism that the game hasn't always had are just sort of stepping up and becoming more prominent in the game.
Mate, I agree. And it's exciting. You've got to take risks. When you do the draft, the good clubs take risks, but maybe I'm just too old now and I enjoy it. But I'll have pick one in this reverse, and I'm hoping we see. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, I do. Sam Law and Ashcroft. Oh, it's mids again. No. Oh, well, that's tough, isn't it? Because you would say law of averages is getting better that the hard one it is rugs. Okay, I need a midfielder to join Levi. So I've got, you know what, I'm easy. Sid Draper, straight away. I'm going to Sid Draper. For me, back to what Dylan was saying, I think the highest ceiling of a player I've seen, I think this is modern day X-Factor goal-kicking mids. And for those who have watched videos when we talked about Petrarca, the common misconception in the AFL draft is key defenders and key forwards are hard. We talked about Petrarca's are hard. Goal-kicking mids to translate from junior footy to men's football, when that 30-plus goal-kicking mid is integral to good sides. I think Sid Draper has that Philippo vibe about him. He's kind of gone under the radar, but I think you're looking 3 years' time, this guy is a 30-goal-a-year player who can break the game open. So I've got to pair him with Levi, and I think I've got a sexy little midfield duo there.
There was an awesome post the other day by Michael Albaro, who's with Rookie Me Central, and he posted a picture of Sid Draper like just bursting away from the stoppage, and he was almost like on his side. He looked like an ice skater, you know, like going around the track. Yeah. Just the degree of angle that he was coming out of the contest. So he's got that awesome quick change of movement, like that sort of explosive agility, and then that explosivity to get away from the contest as well. So he's got that eye-catching stuff, and then he can drive the ball really far inside 50. I think there's maybe a couple of questions on his sort of shorter kicking, just being able to hit the targets inside 50, but he's certainly a guy that can win you a clearance, burst away, and then drive it inside 50. So meters gain guy for sure.
Yeah, it's what I like them players, and I feel like Levi and Sid, it just feels right. I've got Mr. Consistency, and then when Sid does have a bad game, at least I've still got my 35 touches at 80% from Levi Ashcroft, so he kind of hides him a little bit. So that was my thought process of building a team.
100%, and it's all about the mix, right? You've got to get that midfield with the certain parts that it needs to make up the whole thing. So you've done well there.
Well, midfielder, Mr. Dillon, we've got who's joining Big Sam.
See, this is where you think that I'm probably going to go with Sullivan, but I'm not again, which is strange because I've had him at number one for so long. I'm doing a bit of a similar thing to you here, but I kind of need my endurance bunny for this pick. So I'm going to go with Jagger Smith.
I like that.
Down Lawler. So I've got my guy that can rack up the footy. I've got my big-bodied mid in there in Lawler, someone that can kind of fight off make a bit of space for Jagger. Jagger's going to pick up all of those loose balls around the contest, fly away. He's going to get up and down the ground with his endurance, and he's got a bit of speed too. Not really explosiveness, but he's got that speed. So he'll get around, kind of create the outnumber, create those overloads, and kind of get us up the field ultimately. The two of them together as a couple.
He is. Jagger was someone that I think the last power rankings, I think Jagger was 2 behind Levi. I feel like he's getting, he reminds me of Cam McKenzie, who I talked quite highly about a couple of years ago, saying that he does all the dirty stuff for all the guys you're talking about who are higher up than him. He's doing all the hard stuff. I see Jagger up at Oakley, and I know Finn's the star. Tom Gross gets a lot of love as well for his X-Factor ability, but Jagger seems to get his hands dirty, and I like that in a player because ultimately when Jagger becomes an AFL player, they ain't giving him the star moniker day one.
100%. I think everything you've touched on there is perfect with Jagger. I think the only negative, and it probably I'd say Levi's a bit in the same category. They can't really go anywhere else. So they have to be centre bounce midfielders because that's their strength, like winning that first ball, creating for teammates. But you probably can't put them behind the ball or ahead of the ball necessarily.
No, I agree, but hey, they're good picks. I know we've picked them, and that might be an element of arrogance, but I think Sid Draper and Jagger, that's a quality midfield matchup.
It's funny that you mentioned Cam Mackenzie there because I did a 2022 draft comparison with this draft the other day, and I was trying to match players. So I had like Cadman with Harry Armstrong as a possible similar type player from each draft, and I actually matched Mackenzie to Jagger.
Yeah, I was huge on him. It's funny when people, because it's easy when you do the power rankings to like kind of do it with excitement. And me and Leckdog do a lot of work on this, and we always talk about if you're ranking them through ceiling, the draft is probably way different. If you're ranking them through consistency, it's different again. But
100%.
I looked at Cam Mackenzie, and it's no surprise that he's had a decent-ish start at Hawthorn because he is Mr. Reliable. He's willing to do the dirty stuff. And I always like these players like Sandy this year, Oakley Chargers, teams with superstars. I'm looking at them next cabs off the rank who are making the superstars, who are doing all that hard work. And that's kind of what I'd like to draft. If I was a list manager, they would be quite high up, probably higher up than a lot of players in my rankings.
You want the facilitator more than the finisher.
Yeah, because I think the finish is quite easy to find because they stand out. Like a blind man could tell you who the best player is, like the finisher at every junior club. But who's the one doing the hard work, the hard yards?
Yeah, the farming.
Yeah, the farming, yeah. And mate, I like it. I like a farmer. Well, you're going to have the first pick on this one. And it's now defenders. You know what?
I was going to say, yeah, we need some defenders.
Well, there isn't many left, to be fair. We've killed the last forward, and Dylan, you get to pick your first forward. You've got Joe Berry, you've got the excitement machine. Who are you finding here?
We only have two forwards here.
Yeah.
2 forwards. Okay, so this is my last one. I've got to go. Yeah, I've got to take Harry Armstrong here.
Here he is.
Wait. No, I'm going to take Jack Whitlock.
Oh, he's done it. This might be a tactical one.
I'm just laying down a bit of an insurance policy.
I like it. I mean, these are real fascinating ones. We saw Lemmy a couple of years ago, who, when people did their draft like a year before, Lemmy was probably in the top 20 of most people's calculations. He had injuries. Obviously, Adelaide brought in a heap of players, and Lemmy kind of fell back. The Whitlocks were two guys that many people were talking about potentially could be top 10, potentially top 15. Slightly slid, but would you say there's an argument that both of them have played multiple positions in them hard positions? I actually think they're probably underrated in this draft.
I think so. I think they are. And I think the fact that it's got such depth in this draft, they're almost turning into speculative picks, where I think in other years they'd probably be 10 to 15. And I just, like what you said about Harry Armstrong before, and you talked about the fact that he was sort of a late bloomer second half of the season. If you went back to pre-national championships, I reckon you'd have both the Whitlocks ahead of Armstrong. So it's really only been that the fact that the Whitlocks have probably stayed there, and Armstrong's probably had a couple of performances that he's just peaked and gone ahead. But I think Jack, the ability to be able to, I mean, some of his ground level stuff is absolutely outrageous. So he's got all the flexibility in the world. I think he could be like an oversized giant winger, sort of a better version of like a Nick Cox at Essendon, something like that.
Nick Cox, we've talked about him loads on this show because that was like one of the unvogue things, wasn't it? Do you remember at the time that having a 195 plus winger suddenly started out of nowhere, became in vogue. Like everyone wanted one. I'm trying to find what the next in vogue thing is, but I can see that because the Whitlocks have Sydney doubling up on both of them written all over them, don't they?
100%. Like, and they don't. Sydney always love a speculative pick, and they've probably done their homework, so it's probably not speculative to them, but it feels speculative at least. But they're good at it.
Yeah, you can definitely see Sydney going Jack and Matt, and suddenly we do this show 10 years time, and Jack and Matt are 1 and 3.
Yep, 100%.
Well, I've got to get a forward, right? I've got me sexy big guy, right? So I need something exciting, and I don't often do this because those who know me know that I hate Essendon Football Club, but Isaac Keiko is coming in. I need to match the X factor of Joe Barry, and I'm going with, in my opinion, probably the first time for a long time I can remember a player that's in an academy that is a need for the club about to draft them.
Yeah, I mean, Isaac Keiko, I'm jealous because he's one of my favourite players in this draft. I reckon he's pretty different to Barry. So we've gone with kind of the same types of players. Like we've gone one tall, one small, but they're quite different. Like we talked about, Barry gets up the ground higher. Kako is more of a closer to home forward for me. He can run through the midfield, so he has that endurance, but he has that little bit of extra X factor close to goal for me. The power to be able to win a stoppage, break the tackle, and just kick those miraculous goals. He had a bit of a weird season in the Coates League as far as his goal kicking, because I think he kicked something like 19 goals, 38 or something. So he had an off year there, but I think that, like, I'm putting that down as a blip, and I think he's usually pretty clinical in front of goal.
I agree. I think, yeah, my thought process, I've got Job leading up to centre-half forward, all that space behind him. He's going to feast off that, and obviously, like you say, goal kicking may be the blip, but I'm just hoping that he's just getting them all out the back and he can run with his beautiful dreadlocks towards goal and roof.
There's a cult player there, isn't there? Like, this guy could be absolutely like ticket sales, box office. And I think that has to come into the picture as well.
He's got Spider Everett written all over him, hasn't he? Like, you know, he's got the dreads. I mean, you can see we had the Anthony McDonald Tipper Woody song. It feels like we've got an Isaac Keiko song in the offing.
Yep. Needs a chant.
It does need a chant. He looks the player. So Essendon, you've got your yearly Pom loves you thing there. I've built him up, so hopefully he goes well, because I did build Arwin Davey Jr. up and he's never kicked on. So always listen to that as well, chat. So, but here we are. I'm hoping for ruck. I'll settle for defender though. I really don't want mid. Oh, there we are. Oh dear. Well, there we are. We've got the easy positions out. So I've got Levi. I've got Sid. I look good. You know what? Against my better judgment, I am going to go Big Josh from Eastern Ranges. Those who know me know I love Patrick Cripps. I want an enforcer. I want a big guy. I want someone who's going to throw his weight around. I think he is the most underrated young player. He's slid down people's draft rankings, which I'm surprised about, because usually if you win the Brownlow, that type of player shoots up the order. But I want my enforcer, and I'm bringing him in. Big bull. I think with Josh, it's with the slipping down the order, it's really just that national champs. If you take his Coates Talent League season, it's like marvelous, really. Like, you couldn't knock anything that he's done at that level. Like 35 touches a week, pretty much, kicks 2 or 3 goals, but everyone's just petrified of that national champs, where he kind of, I don't know, he was like a 15 to 18 touch guy and didn't, like, barely hit the scoreboard. So it's a bit of an anomaly. Yeah, it is. I mean, I think the scoreboard thing is the one, though, isn't it? Because everyone wants a goal kicking mid, but I always say this, every great team has that extractor. Like, it's all right having your brilliance outside and around, but you need the guy who graphs. And I always think Cripps is incredibly underrated because he's the best in the league at it. And I always say Cripps and Bontempelli, they always say, oh, Bont's a better player. And I'm like, yeah, he probably hits the scoreboard more, but Cripps is the best extractor of the ball in the world. You put, I always say this, Nick Dacos next to Cripps, there wouldn't be an argument of the best midfielder of all time. It would be Nick Dacos.
Yeah, like what he can do with the ball. I think that's the difficult thing with picking that big-bodied mid is if he's not Patrick Cripps, like if he doesn't have that sort of dexterity at ground level and he's a little bit sloppy, he ends up being Will Setterfield. And that player comes in and gets spat out all of the time. And I think that's what's scaring people off. And then he puts in that national championships where it's a bit, I don't know, it seemed to like lack a little bit of physicality and he just looked a little bit wrong in there. And then you start to get nervous. You're like, am I getting Cripps or Tom Green, or am I getting Will Setterfield or David Myers?
So Will Setterfield and Myers linked together. The Carlton in me, Will Setterfield, gotta remember him well. I remember him well.
I think he was like a pick 6. He got drafted to the Giants, I think, in top 5 or 6 pick.
Yeah, and then we got him for next to nothing, and we thought we had George Hewitt, and it turns out we had Will Setterfield.
Exactly.
Well, you've got a mid. Who are you going with?
I still like the pick, by the way. I'm going with, and it sort of, I guess it's going to be a theme with me, but I'm adding I've already got one sort of bigger bodied mid in Lawler. I'm going to pick up the other one in Harvey Langford. I'm going to try to bludgeon you with a 1-2 punch of Lawler and Langford here. I just think he's been underrated throughout the season. I think the first half of the season, he was still, he's racking up 25 kicking goals, a little bit flying under the radar. He had that a couple of games in the academy where he wasn't maybe spectacular, but he still, went forward and kicked the goal. And then his national championships, like wins the Lark medal, beating up on players. His final series was awesome. And I just think as a big-bodied goal-kicking mid, someone that he has that defensive part to his game as well when we talk about that. So he can be a bit of an anchor for you in the midfield, but it's really the combination, I'd say, of his kicking, those darts that he can fire off with that left foot that are really strong, and then his ability to go forward, take a big mark. I think that's too much to pass up on. I think that's what, for me, he gets Smiley there.
We talked about Bontempelli. Like, I've seen some weird similarities with Harvey Langford to other players, but I think he could be that next cab off the rank in the terms of we're looking for a Cripps, we're looking for a Bond. He does have that vibes that this guy can win hardball, but he can also hit the other end of the scoreboard. And I agree with you. He's come late. I've seen draft boards having him 1, 2, 3 as well. So he's definitely someone that I think this is probably where you look at Josh and Harvey. If Harvey doesn't become a bull, he's probably got skills elsewhere where Josh, it's inside bull or nothing.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I think the combine will actually give us a little bit of information on Langford too, because I think the main thing that you watch him, it's probably just that spread. Like he doesn't have that top end speed, and I think the combine will sort of say like, is he really too slow, or is it enough to work with? So that'll be interesting.
Speed is something that I hate because the ball always travels faster than the man. So you look at some players that aren't particularly quick. He's got good spatial awareness, so I think he's something that he can probably use that to an asset. You look at Pendlebury, he's slowed right down, but his ability to find space makes him quick.
100% agree with that. So yeah, I'd say he's going to be fine. I mean, I guess there's some level, like a base level of speed that they sort of need to hit, I suppose, just to be able to keep up with the demands. And you would, if he had a bit more speed, he'd be able to kind of, burst through, break a tackle, that sort of stuff. But he's sort of big enough to be just a presence in there. So I'm a big fan.
When you look at Cripps, Cripps isn't Usain Bolt, but he's very hard to stop. You might be quicker than him. Good luck bringing him down there.
I think with Cripps, people miss the fact of how skillful he is and his like ascension to AFL. He was like a shorter guy when he was a teenager, so he was basically playing as a smaller player, and then he had a big growth spurt right before he got drafted. So he sort of developed all the skills of a small player and then has the body of a key position forward.
He's very big. I've stood next to him. He's deceptively intimidating as well. He doesn't look as big on TV as he is in real life. I've got to say that. But you've got first pick here, and there isn't many chances to have.
Defender. I reckon this is the hardest. Well, actually, no, this is actually easy. I'm just straight up taking my boy, the Viking, Alex Tyreau.
Ooh. Tell you what, this is someone that has really, he's another late call, because I think if everyone did this at the start, he definitely wasn't in anyone's top 20. And suddenly there now. Why do you like him so much?
This one's an interesting one because it's not anything. He just excites me to watch. Like, he's an eye test player for me. The way that he attacks those contests. You know, you look at just how the game, again, like how the game's kind of going, and you have these key position players that can be a little bit uncompetitive in the way that they attack some of those contests, whether they're ahead of the ball or behind the ball. You know, I think of players like a Zerk Thatcher at Port Adelaide, who doesn't impress me that much with how many contests he gets to and just his competitiveness in those contests. I think Alex Tyreau, sort of everything that they're not. He's a little bit undersized for an absolute key defender, but he makes up for that with his attack on the ball, his extra bit of athleticism that he can jump up and just create pressure in the air. He's really good at ground level and he uses the ball well. So as that sort of hybrid interceptor, like, he's a bit bigger than a James Sicily, or Vlosten, that sort of medium type, but sort of a pseudo key position player. And I think he could sort of anchor any defense and be the guy that disrupts, wins the ball back off the opposition, and then lets you attack. And he can still defend. Like, he's not a liability defensively. So I think he's really the perfect modern day defender.
Yeah, everyone seems to be that 190. Like, you look at, like, we were talking about this when we did the Cowton specific one, and it's almost like gone are the days that 200 centimeters, 300 centimeters, whatever you want to say, giant defenders. It seems most of the great clubs are going that 199, one of them, and then surrounding him with that 195, quicker, more athletic, ball user type. And it's weird how trends happen. Like, you're starting to see that, and Alex, I think, suits that, because how often was the measure for key defenders? You start as an interceptor, then you become the lockdown. Now it seems to be reversed. You start as the third defender, and then if you're good enough and when you get the body, you go into that key position. Alex can play that interceptor and be hidden away day one, Kai.
100%. And like, I think you're spot on there with that. You've got that one piece, sort of like a gorilla taker. Like, one guy has to take the gorilla, and then pretty much everybody else around that, or all your tools around that, they have to be offensive as well. And that's why now, if you're taking a player at the top end of the draft, like top 10, top 20, even top 30, you're probably saying, like, I don't know if I can take just an absolute lockdown defender. Like, I'll get him with a later pick because he has no little skill, maybe, like doesn't kick the footy well, all of those sorts of things. You're looking for someone that can kind of do everything.
Yeah, and I think DGB, Denver Granger Brass, might be that victim of a guy who's a giant. He's a big boy, but I remember when we did his draft profile, he was kind of a lockdown defender, kind of an interceptor, but it was like questionable ball use. And you can see what's happened at Hawks. It's just, he's not a master of anything. He's kind of just a really good, okay player in all the boxes. And it seems the game has evolved in them couple of years that you have to be a master of something and then we'll build the rest. And I think Alex, like you say, he's definitely eye-catching. His intercept, his ball use down on the deck, which people forget. Very important asset now that all the forwards, we don't really have 170 smalls. The smalls are 180 now.
Well, that's the thing. And if you just do it on a sheer probability point of view, like the ball's on the ground way more than it's in the air. So you've got to have, if you've got 2-3 guys that can't pick up the ball off the ground, you're going to be screwed, and especially in your back 50. And we probably, not that overall, but like we probably saw that with Sydney at the weekend, you know, in the grand final. Like they had a well oversized forward line and they couldn't win a contest inside forward 50.
Mate, I'm a Carlton fan. I've seen ground balls in the defensive 50. It kills me. I'm totally with you. The ability to pick up the ball when the ball does spend 80%. And that shows why the draft is so important, because you actually see trends in the game. Like, I remember when I first started covering the draft, it was still very antiquated of forwards. They catch the ball, they kick goals. Defenders, they catch the ball, they stop goals. Where now, like you said with Alex, offensive is probably more important than your marking. If your ability to use the ball, if you go at 90% by foot, you're well ahead of the best lockdown defender in the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think kind of going back to what you were talking about before, we probably went through that stage in the middle 2000s where it was just like bigger is better. Like, just give me the tallest guy. Oh, he's got pretty good skills. We'll grab him. But they can often, if the skills aren't quite right in the air, the fact that they're, you know, that much bigger than the next guy probably doesn't help them. You're picking that footballer at the end of the day. I think that's a trap people fall into, thinking bigger is better.
Yeah, mate, bigger isn't always better. It isn't always better. I tell my wife that all the time. So, with you, Dylan. I'm with you, Dylan. Well, I get a defender, and you know what? I'm looking in my team. I've got Levi. I've got good, hard, honest. You know what? I'm going to stay to Bendigo. I'm going to go with Toby Travalla, who Carlton player. He's a Carlton player. Those who have been watching my show as well know, I keep saying, you don't need Dan Houston when you have pick 11, because you can pick up Dan Houston in the draft with the ability to play in the midfield, which Carlton are obsessed with buying half-backs and hoping they play midfield. This kid could play midfield already. He's that bigger than the average bear, great kick, can intercept, can defend as well, and with that ability to play in the midfield as well, I think he's huge. But as a halfback, genuinely, I think he really... I thought in the VFL, I was surprised he wasn't a top 5 pick. When I watched him in the VFL, I thought how he handled men actually excited me. I was like, okay, this guy's already showcasing how you use him day one.
I think you're finding that now. You see these guys that are really skinny and have small bodies. It doesn't seem to be that much of a step up for them to play with bigger bodies. Like they just get away with it with their smarts and their movement. And I think one of the biggest assets that Travalla has over some of those other halfbacks that are just good kicking players, he's got the foot skills as well, but he's also, like, he's a hard runner and someone that can run at a really, really high intensity for a really long time. So again, we talk about those overloads, someone from the midfield, someone from halfback that's going to get forward of centre, going to work into space and create an outnumber. He's your guy. And then he's going to do all the disrupting aerially as well. It's just like I reckon there's a world where he ends up being the best player in this draft.
Yeah, you know, I can see it because I always think the best midfielders genuinely start at halfback, don't they? Like we saw Nick Dacos. Last year, the year before, you saw Sheasel, who I love Shees. Then you saw Colby McElhinney this year. I thought he really impressed playing at halfback and learning the role. Toby has that already. That's his bread and butter. But I can see at the size he is as well. I think this is understated. He's quick for 187. He's got that endurance as well.
Yeah.
A limp kick. I could see him year 2, year 3, being that Lockie Whitfield type mid-forward who, oh, sugar, we're getting battered down the back. We'll put him at halfback as well. He's that Swiss Army knife player.
Yeah, Whitfield's actually a really good shout. The one that I've always gone with the comparison for me is Will Day, who was another guy that started at half back, makes that move into the midfield. But I think if you have some sort of an education behind the ball, like these guys that grow up and they play a bit of footy at half back, they seem to be able to take that reading of the game into other positions. And I think that's why you've seen it. Like even at Bontempelli, he started his footy playing with the Northern Knights at half back. And I remember even reading a draft profile on Bont, and it said he's like 2 outside, which just sounds absolutely crazy to hear that now. But I think Trevallious got that, and we've seen it when he's Bendigo, when he has gone into the forward line or gone into the midfield, he's been really good there, been really dangerous, and he's just got that complete football package, like the smarts and everything, and then the athleticism. So yeah, I'm pretty jealous that you've got that pick.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was tough, but I mean, we're down to bare bones now, and I've got the first pick here, and it's either great or bad.
Oh no!
Oh, there we are.
There it is.
Well, that means that we're going to finish with a defender as well, so I'll update my sheet. But yeah, I mean, I'm not even going to make this exciting. Yeah, Dodson comes in. Why? Well, he is the best ruck in the draft.
Like, I think quite comfortably.
He is. And you know what? I always say this as well. One thing that I look at is what league you play in. Right, and the SANFL, in my opinion, is the toughest league physicality-wise by a long way. I think when you look, Jason on Francis is a great example. These guys, even at 18, are playing like thugs. It's tough. There's no easy ball. When you watch the Waffle, I always think the Waffle's got kind of like that nice pace kicking. It's like West Coast in the 90s. Bit of separation.
I 100% agree with the Waffle. Like, I've watched some of the games. It's sort of like watching Freo at AFL level. Like, they just love to just like move the ball around the back. They go laterally. They try to open up the field. Then they're like, nah, I don't fancy it. So they come back the other way. Nobody's really doing anything quickly there. But yeah, I think the player that comes to mind there is with South Australia for that example. And the Dodson thing is Sid Draper. I mean, he looks probably more developed than a lot of the Victorian boys, like just his legs, and that's obviously where he's getting a lot of that power from. But yeah, they do have that, just well developed athletes. I think if there's an area maybe where the South Australian footy is a little bit lacking, it's probably the kicking. But we're talking about Dodson, so I'm going off on a tangent here. I'll let you go back to our man.
No, I agree. And it's something that I look at, and that's probably like my football background in the UK, soccer background. You know, the Italian leagues are defensive. You know, the Spanish leagues are technical. I'd say the SANFL is the Premier League. It's physical. It's physical is first and foremost. Everything else is secondary. And if you're looking at rucks, the big thing you want is physicality, the ability to put your body on the line. And looking at Alex, he's come from nowhere, hasn't he? I think he's definitely one of the bloomers late in this draft. But 203... Obviously, we don't know his weight, but he kind of looks ready to play AFL football. But I love the fact that he's got that agility. He's also got that ability to really use the ball pretty well. He finds that handball down at Sturt almost with his eyes closed. He hits his man, and he's really developed. So I like this pick, and I think he's going to be a very good player. If you've got a Max Gawn, a TDK, you've got someone like that who's ready to go now. This is someone you hide away for 2-3 years and look to cash in.
Yeah, 100%. And I think the TDK one's a good one there. That athleticism to be able to compete aerially and when you're sort of in close, like just to not just fall away and be kind of bullied by someone, but then you've really got an extra... I think what everybody's looking for in the ruck is that extra midfielder, right? So when you're on transition, that player's going to get involved as well. And I think that's where we've got that dying breed of rucks who, if they can't compete in the transition, then you're pretty much out of the game for 60 to 70% of the game. So Dodson fits that perfectly, like basketball background, obviously. So that's always where the skill comes from. But yeah, he's wicked. And I'm not going to get anyone as good in this draft with a ruck pick.
It's one of my favourite things. You mentioned the basketball. We do love a basketball reference around these parts because it's probably the most used thing in AFL, isn't it? It's the most talked about thing, but you need a ruck, and there isn't many, but you did do an insurance policy, so it shows good list management. You did have Whitlock there, so who are you going with here?
So, and I can pick anyone from anywhere here, can't I? So I can sort of change things up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw Jack Whitlock into the ruck, and then with this pick, I'm going to take. I've got Langford. Okay, so this one I'll take Harry Armstrong.
He's still available.
He's still available, right?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, this is thinking outside the square. I love this list management, but Armstrong, we've talked about him a lot, but like, what do you like about Mr. Armstrong?
So I think there's some comparisons to, say, like an Aaron Cadman a couple of years ago. He's got that the really long arms. He's got the like aerial athleticism similar to Cadman. So he's got that reach, and you can sort of see that in contests where his arms are just getting up ahead of everybody else's. I haven't got any like aerial, standing verticals on him or anything like that, but he obviously gets up there really high. I think probably the one area of his game that he doesn't have is that ability to get like right up the ground, like someone like a Jeremy Cameron, that kind of pseudo, almost can come up and be a winger or a midfielder. He doesn't really have that. Like, he only averages about 8 to 9 touches at any level that he plays. So he plays a lot deeper. But I think as far as a key position forward, someone that can compete in the air, and he's got the ground level skills of being that just, like a Cadman, someone that can sort of compete at ground level as well. He ticks that. I think it's 50-50 on him and Shanahan as the number one key. As you said, Shanahan gets up the ground a little bit more, so I can see why you made that pick, but I think Harry Armstrong's at least the next best to Shanahan, so that's why I've gone with him.
Yeah, I said it in one of my previews. I love Armstrong's kicking action, which I think should be talked about. Like, it looks one of them ones that mechanically, under pressure, is going to hold up. Where Job, I feel like, is a bit like Harry Mackay with his kicking, that it feels like under pressure, it may fall off without a little bit of experience, where Harry's got that like dead-eye dick about him. He looks like under pressure, he's going to flip the ball 3 times, slot it through, he's going to be fine.
I forgot to mention that. And the fact that, with Armstrong, he can sort of pick up the ball 55 to 60 out, and you're almost just as confident as you are when he's 30 out.
Yeah, I always say kicking action's important because mechanically, there's the golf from me coming in. If you've got a repeatable action, it's pretty easy to be good when it's hard. But we talked about forwards, we finished with defenders. Probably the least exciting in this draft, but you do have first pick. Who are you going with? You're going to pair up with Alex Taru. You've got a good backline already.
I do. I've got to go here with Harry Oliver. So, Sandringham Dragons boy. Now, that's 2 in a row, Sandringham Dragons. I think he is, like we talked about with Travaglia, he probably doesn't have the versatility, like to be able to go into the midfield, doesn't have that like as strong a running capability like a Travaglia, and you lose the aerial ability. But as far as just like a plain distributor, someone to take the kick-ins, kind of set up tempo, I remember a quote from the Vic Metro coach calling him the metronome for that team, which I think classifies him really well. Just his ability to be able to like recycle the ball, change direction, keep it going, hit up those corridor kicks when you want to go really fast. And then he's even shown the ability to be able to sneak forward and kick a goal as well, like a long sort of running goal, like you want your halfbacks. I think he, replicates someone probably like a Dan Rioli, that type of player. And I've been a big fan for a long time. I think the depth of the draft, he's probably not going to go until around 30, somewhere like that, 25 to 35, something in that area. But I think he's a gun and one of the best kicks in this draft.
Oh, mate, I agree. I think Sandy, it's a bit like it was in the Nick Dacos draft. I think they've got so many players in their team. I reckon a good portion of them are going to be drafted, like a high portion, because it's one of them weird things. We said it about Nick Dacos as well, that because when you play and everyone's looking at you, your teammates get forgotten about. And because Levi Ashcroft is so good, I think some of his mates have been forgotten about because we've players we haven't talked about yet. Murphy Reed, who I keep calling him Mr. Consistency. Like, that guy bores me watching him. But he is that player that if you bring him in, he is guaranteed to get you 20 touches, 4 tackles. There's so many players they've got like that who are just guaranteed things. And Harry Oliver, in the hardest position, in my opinion, Harrison Oliver, to draft, but the easiest position to make work in the AFL. He looks like he can do it all.
Yeah, I think it's a good point what you said about being in the Sandringham team, because you go and naturally just have a look at the stat sheet after the game. It's going to be Ashcroft, it's going to be Reed. You might even have like a Kennedy, someone playing like a third or a fourth, midfield role. Sam Marshall's in there. So they're all getting all of the ball. And then Harry Oliver's had a game where he's had like 21 and kicked the goal off half back. But he's been absolutely integral to everything that they've done. But like, they're such a good transition team. And I reckon he's a major, major part of that, just the work that he does off half back. So yeah, it's almost a bit of, and again, I reckon if we threw him into like the 2021 draft or the 2020 draft, he's probably pushing top 10, top 15.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. I really do think I think we've said it a few times, because every year doing this kind of work, the media make the draft seem like it's the draft class forever. And then suddenly they say next year's draft class is good. This year really has suited that. It's a real big draft class. And I love what you said there. I think there's some players here that suddenly being in the 20s, I actually think is a benefit, because I actually think that's probably where I keep saying the mistakes are going to be this year. I reckon you're going to see so many mistakes where the eye has deceived maybe what you should have done, and someone's going to get excited by maybe Harry Armstrong's last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Not maybe go with the brain, go with the eye. And it's going to be fascinating, because there's some players, I think, 20 to 40 that I'd be willing to put big money on. They'll be the best players in their draft.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I reckon there's definitely a big propensity to be sucked in, something eye-catching. And you probably look at a team, like Sydney, who has those back-to-back picks. We joked about it with the Whitlocks, but they're probably like as well-placed in this draft just because of that depth factor. They've just come off another grand final. They're probably as well-placed as anyone.
Oh, I agree. It's why I said about Eagles, and that's become a rumour now that I'd trade that pick. If I was the Eagles and I need so much, I reckon the top 3 is clear of 5 to 20. I think it's so hard to pick 5 to 20. I think maybe this is the time we see someone trade a top 5 pick and go, right, who's desperate for the best midfielder? We're desperate for a defender, a midfielder, a forward, and ideally a reserve ruck. See if we can monopolise it. See if we can get 3 picks inside 20.
Yeah. And teams are going to be scared off with that. Teams never like to draft like too late into the draft. But I went through an exercise the other day where I just wrote down every player that I would sort of consider drafting myself. And you get to the end of the list and you're at like 80 to 90 names. You're in that space and you're like, I'd still take that guy. Like he's got to get drafted, this guy, like just on his football skills. So it's going to be really interesting what clubs do and like how deep it goes.
Mate, I agree. And we've given Sandy a lot of love. They get a lot of love every draft. But I am going to finish with Luke Traynor. Guy who slipped, had a few questionable concussion injuries, which obviously is always going to knock you down. But I think you talked about the transition. We talked about the importance of an interceptor who can transition the ball. I think he's potentially the best in the draft at that facet. I've got him next to Toby. Suddenly I'm looking at the back line here and I've got the ability to defend, but I've got 2 guys that can get the ball to Job in a blink of an eye. I think he's the perfect player if you've got key position depth and you can really nurse him and make sure his body's okay. He's going to be one hell of a footballer.
100%. I'm actually you've got Travaglia and Traynor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely jealous of that back line. I mean, I absolutely love Alex Tyree, But yeah, if you talk about being seduced by a late season, you've probably got Tyroo as more of that player. I do think one interesting thing about Tyroo, like if we're having that conversation, like Tyroo's, I think he's December or November born, so he is one of the youngest ones. So it probably makes a bit more sense, like developmentally with him. But yeah, Trainer, like we talk about that defender that can do absolutely everything, and there's not really maybe like his one-on-one stuff, and we talk about taking like a really big key forward, like a muscular gorilla type. He's probably not going to be able to do that, but he can do everything else. Like he can win the ball back for you, distribute the ball like a flanker, pretty much. So you just get so many elements of your game with one player.
We couldn't agree more. And he gives me that StephenB vibe when he uses the ball, just how quickly he gets that ball, and it's almost like one action. He's gone through his marking action, it's straight on his boot and it's distributed. And you look at the great defenders in the league now, that's something that they have, that uncanny ability to see where he's kicking the ball before he's even taken possession of it. That's such a gift in today's transition game. So I feel like if everything's okay with Luke, someone's going to get a bargain. And I do feel like, I feel like there's maybe a bit of overzealousness on how he's fallen in the draft, because I think if he's good to go, this guy he's a top 3 pick in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, as content creators, we can only get information that we hear secondhand, really. Like I hear things that recruiters are a little bit worried about that. And of course, like when it's something like concussion, it's not something necessarily that's easily fixable, and it's a little bit complicated. So clubs will look at that from a risk management point of view and be worried about it. But I think, he could be fine. Like he could be just like any other player. He's had a couple of concussions this year and there's nothing to worry about. So in that case, he's probably top 10.
Yeah. I think it's something that's so underrated, the ability to transition. And that's why I'm glad we've gone heavy on transition. I think these teams, looking at these teams, on paper, you'll see them on the screen. We're doing this, just taking my word for it. But I went Luke Trainer, I've got Trevelyan, I've got Dodson, I've got Ashcroft, I've got Big Draper and Big Smiley, Shanahan and Kako versus Oliver, Tyroo, Whitlock, Layla, Smith, Langford, Berry and Armstrong. They're very strong teams.
I think I'm getting smashed in the ruck there, but I'll have to get Lawler and Langford to fight back.
Yeah, the ruck, I always stand by this. I think the ruck is the most overrated position in the AFL, though, because I think there's so much disparity between superstar ruck and then Darcy Cameron, all due respect, but there's Darcy Cameron as well, who's just a grafter. But I think then that midfield battle looks, I'd pay good money to watch them 3 midfielders go versus each other.
We've definitely got it's a very attacking, there's not a lot of like defensive stability in either lineup, I don't think. We're going for the win.
Yeah, you know what I like, and I always like doing this with my mates and stuff, this is the kind of stuff that we do over a beer, but you can see personality of how you talk about your content and how I talk about my content in the teams we've drafted. Yeah. Like, I am pretty sure if someone showed me yours and said which content creator is, I would allocate it to you. Like, I love
that. Yeah. No, I totally agree. It's like a microcosm.
Yeah, of what we really like. So everyone knows I'm a sucker for transition football. I like my attacking defenders, and then they also know when it comes to the midfield, I like boring reliability as well. Like I value boring over exciting in the mid.
Do you have one player in this? This is just a question from me without notice, but do you have one player in this draft that is probably not getting the love, but he's sort of just been your boy?
Yeah, Tom Gross. I loved. I heavily talked about him last year when I did my way too early predictions. Goal kicking mids are as rare as rocking horse poo, and he's also big and can defend. And I think we talked about some of the knocks on some of the mids. I think the fact I could probably use him as a medium-sized forward if I needed to, or an on-baller. I think comes into it for me, that it's a safe pick in that late 20s. I feel if I had 25 and Tom's there, I'm taking him.
I think, yeah, and he's another one where, I don't know, he just seems such a safe pick. If you got him anywhere outside the top 15, you're going, this is pretty nice. Like, gives me some sort of a combination between Cal Ward, Rory Sloane, and then maybe even a little bit of George Wardlaw, although I don't think he has the power of a Wardlaw, but like something, he's going to be something in between there and just has that goal sense. Like he's fun to watch. His attack on the ball has that competitive instinct. So, yeah. I like that one.
And everyone's talking about him sliding, but he's playing a role with two of the most standout midfielders, Finn O'Sullivan and Jagger Smith. Like, yeah, of course he doesn't stand out. Like, them two superstars.
100%. And he's doing, like, I remember that quarterfinal that they had down in Port Melbourne, and you had all of the stars in that game. It was Jagger, Finn O'Sullivan, and he was a standout, kicking goals, 25 to 30 touches. Like, he might not get the 40 touch game that like a Jagger gets, but just such a good footballer.
Who's yours?
I reckon for me, the one that was like the hottest on early was Jesse Detoli.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I watched him early in the season and I thought this guy's really good. He wasn't getting big numbers. Like he obviously had a little bit of talk, like he was one of the better players for the Northern Knights, but he was just like, he never came up in draft boards seemingly. And then all of a sudden he just went bang and just started to put it all together. He had the numbers that sort of backed up the small things that you see when you go and watch him live. So he's my boy. And I like, he's got a lot of personality on the field. Like you can sort of see it come out. Like he's really creative and it's a bit of a shit house. And it's good to watch.
He has got a bit of a ginny about him, hasn't he?
Yeah.
You can see when he's in the AFL, when he gets settled 2-3 years' time, he's going to be part of that TikTok type guy that's going to be willing to maybe dish it out a little bit and become a fan favourite, but the kind of guy that every person hates if he doesn't play for you.
Yeah, I did a post about him after he had a really good game and I called him the Prince of Preston. And I actually got a message from one of his friends saying, you've nailed the caricature that is Jesse Detoli. Like that's him. He's the prince. Like he's pretty much any environment that he's in, he's the king. So yeah, I like that in a player. I like the confidence.
Yeah, he's definitely got personality. Well, I mean, Dylan, tell us what you're up to for the rest of the off season. Link again, it'll pop up on screen just above me, so make sure you go over there. But Dylan, tell us what you're up to.
So we've got the Combine this weekend, so I'll be doing a little bit of posting around the Combine, and then it'll just be, like, to be honest, between now and the draft, it's just going to be all about the draft. We're just going to be doing player profiles, stuff like that, comparing drafts, all that kind of draft content. And then throughout that time and like towards the end of the year, I'm going to try and do some more club-related stuff, particularly once the drafts happen. We can kind of look at how players fit into teams and that sort of thing. So it'll be a little bit more AFL specific, I guess you want to say. So plenty of the works. I've got, a lot on with this kind of stuff, but I've just finished university, so I'm kind of ready to like get into the work now.
Mate, I love it. Well, make sure all of you go over and head on there. Between myself and Dylan, you're going to get loads of content, so at least you can pretend when Carlton or whoever it is you support, say Pig 55, Adrian Cole, you can pretend you've watched him and you know him. You can impress your mates and go, oh, I know him. So always good fun. But thank you very much, Dylan. I had so much fun. That is the AFLX with draftees. So we'll see you next time, everyone. Look after yourselves. Goodbye.
Love it, mate. Cheers.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella bad.